if a woman is being told it's her fault that a man is stumbling, it takes all responsibility off the male gender. How do we get there?
Hey everyone, welcome back to the YouTube channel. My name is Shelby Bowen and I am joined with Suzette, the marriage warrior today, and we are going to be diving into purity culture. It's a topic that you guys have mentioned that you would like to hear us speak a little bit more about, talk about some of the subjects like being a chewed up piece of gum, I don't know, some of these other crazy themes and things that have been said in purity culture. And Suzette is a trained counselor, has worked in over 18 years in marriage and family counseling, and she's going to be here today to kind of give us a perspective within psychology on how some of this terminology that we hear in maybe these more charismatic Pentecostal settings growing up, how that can affect us today. And, you know, how some of those negative views of ourselves might be influencing how we see ourselves in the world today. So, Suzette, welcome to the podcast. Welcome back to the YouTube channel.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So tell everybody a little bit briefly, if you haven't watched our other videos, they're so much fun. We talk about, I mean, not that spiritual abuse is fun, but just their stories and the conversations. If you want to go back and watch that video, we do stuff about tithing, the mega church. So there's some cool videos. I'll link them down below. But for everybody who's watching, will you tell them a little bit about who you are?
Well, I'm known as Suzette, the marriage warrior, and I help marriages in crisis. I always help try to get them out of it and learn how to, communicate and not carry so many offenses, and how to move through forgiveness. Not so easy to do is move through forgiveness. The church culture teaches us just forgive, like it's just nothing. And it's much harder. There is a process of it. And then I help individuals grow spiritually and try to figure out how to get them to their mission. What are we doing on this earth? What's our whole goal on this earth? And a lot of times you got to heal before you can get into your reveal of your life. You got to heal and help people learn how to heal their traumas, find their traumas. Most people don't even know how to locate them. Right. And then get to know themselves. Like, how are they really coping in a certain mechanism that's destructive to them, and giving them tools to get out of that. And I find that the community of psychology, counseling, whatever, even the clergy, doesn't give enough tools. Right. And so I'm real focused on, here's what you do to get out of this situation. Here's the roadmap. And certainly the Word of God is, the foundation to all of that. But just throwing scripture at something has never helped me in my life. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't found that it helps many people, just throwing a scripture at them. Just do this because the Bible says. But when you understand yourself and you understand how you or mechanically wired, and then how to untangle some of that and rewire that. That's what I usually help people to do.
I love that. And I'm glad you kind of mentioned that a little bit, because Suzette has a life coach training program called the Marriage Warrior Institute. It's also for couples trainings. I mean, not just for people who are wanting to become life coaches, but people who want healing, whether that's individually or relationally within a marriage. And so we have a discount code, which I'll link down below for people who might be interested in going through that life coach training. It's the training that I went through. And, as you were talking about learning how we're wired, I have, since I've started life coaching and working with some of my clients, and even just in my own life, realized how much the lenses that we have over our eyes impact our relationship with God, impact our relationship with ourselves. And I was even talking to somebody earlier today just about how much recognizing where those lenses coming from is liberating in and of itself.
Of itself, that's right.
Because you almost can recognize, wait, okay, so when something bad happens and I get this, idea in my head, well, oh, here it goes, always me, God never cares about me kind of thing. But then when I can recognize, oh, wait, that's just a lens that I have because of the things that I've been through in my life, it is really liberating, because then you can recognize, oh, that's just a lie. That's not right. Actually true. And then you have the opportunity to figure out what the truth is, let God speak that truth into you, and so much transformation comes from that. And I mean, that's one of the biggest things that I've seen in the women that I've worked with that's helped them so much. So talking about the lenses, when we look at purity culture and we look at, just to give a little bit of context, growing up in, and I'm sure purity culture has permeated across many denominational lines, but probably more in the charismatic, Pentecostal, even, maybe Baptist denominational churches, you're going to hear things as a young child and, a young girl about how if you have had sex with somebody before marriage, well, you're a chewed up piece of gum now. And obviously we're not advocating here for people
horrible.
to go out and do that. Yeah.
Who says that anyway?
Right.
About anything. You're a chewed up piece of gum, much less in a church system. That phrase is not used in the world about value or worth, Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. I had an epiphany. It's like, where'd they come up with that? But go ahead.
I don't know. And it is so prominent. I was scrolling on social media this morning and saw somebody post about that, using that same language, the chewed up piece of gum thing. And so it is something that a lot of people have experienced, and we can dive into a couple of different stories. But just to start off with, can you affirm, just within your training that you've had all of these years, how influential hearing these things as a young woman or even man growing up in an environment like that, where you're told that, oh my gosh, if you've made, if you've done something that within their confines isn't okay, how that can affect your view of yourself if you've been told you're now ruined?
Well, it's part of the construction of the human. Mm-hmm. So it's like building with timber a building that is full of termites. You're not going to build a good building, a good structure. And so that's what's happening with that kind of mind control is they're trying to deduce the person. And everything in Satan's camp is about dismissing and neglecting the individual's worth. Everything's about worth. Okay. So if you get your mind on how does the enemy work and how do I know he's working in my life or my mindset, if worth, dismissing worth or diminishing worth is the topic in your brain, it's the enemy. That's his goal. And if he does it through the world, or if he does it through the church, or however he does it through your marriage, if he's deducing your worth, then that is the goal. God's goal is to give you worth. That's why Jesus came to show us the way of worth. It's all about worth. And when people understand that that's the whole game, and they say, okay, if I'm having these thoughts that are deducing my worth, if I'm having these images that deduce my worth, if I'm having guilt about something I'm doing instead of conviction that's healthier for my worth, then it's about Satan trying to reduce your worth. Because there's something in the DNA of humanity that he is very threatened by. That's why he's always trying to diminish the worth of the individual.
Okay, so when it comes to recognizing that those thoughts are coming in your mind, then what? So you're having these thoughts of you're not worthy, maybe of the person you're married to, or maybe you're dating somebody and those thoughts come up in your head. Well, I've already, done things with somebody else before, so now I'm just
a chewed up piece of gum.
Chewed up piece of gum. How do you overcome that? What do you do?
Well, first of all, I look at it two different ways. First of all, if you're not worthy, what makes me worthy? If you say, I'm not worthy to be with you, well, then what makes me worthy? And according to scripture, our righteousness is as filthy rags. So really none of us are worthy. And the way that I deal with clients when they say, oh, I'm inadequate or I'm unworthy, I'm like, yep, you are. I just go and confront it. Yes, you are. Now what? Okay. So if you already are, that's why Christ had to come. So we had to go through that blood, through that life, right? Because our righteousness, as worthy as we're supposed to be, it's as filthy rags, right? So Satan's goal is to reduce that worth. Okay. That's why Christ came, to give us worth, and we can't get it through works, right? So, and anything that's deducing it is Satan driven to control. If the Satan wants to control us. So if the environment we're in, the family of origin, the Christian community, the school we go to is trying to control, it's so that you don't have that worth of freedom of who you are. What do you want to do? What is your mission on earth, And it's not about painting your hair blue. A lot of people try to get identity through separating themselves by the way they look, or overstimulating their skin, doing all of that stuff through tattooing or a piercing or whatever.
Sure.
And whatever you want to do is fine, but that doesn't separate you.
Yeah.
What separates you is what's inside.
Yeah.
That's what separates you.
Okay, so when we go back to a lot of these environments, can you share a little bit about how these belief systems can impact a marriage? So for example, a woman who's told over and over again growing up that, it is her job to make sure that a man does not stumble by looking at her, by whether that is making sure you can't even tell, what size lumps she got. I don't know, like you got your shoulders covered. Oh, your jeans are too tight. And if you've done those things and you've caused a man to stumble, and that's on you. How does that impact a woman's psyche in general? And then how can that influence her in marriage?
Well, you have to be realistic. Let's back up from this a little bit. If a woman is being told it's her fault that a man is stumbling, it takes all responsibility off the male gender. How'd we get there, right? So I think you got to realistically look at that picture and say, it's not my fault, you're stumbling. Right? Yeah. That's the gaslighting technique, is your fault. So it's on the responsibility of each human. I don't care which gender you are.
Yeah.
Now, as far as, managing yourself properly, being cognizant of how much exposure you have of your body.
Sure.
That's about self-protection, not protection over someone else's, whether they're going to sin or not, their own salvation. And I'm a big proponent of trying to get women to protect their own bodies, like to value themselves and their bodies, and dress accordingly to their own protection. Because here's the deal. If you dress a certain way, and you pass a man who's then going to masturbate to you later, how gross is that, right? Now, I'm not responsible for his sin, but I certainly don't want him to invade my space.
Yeah.
So I can dress a certain way that can make him invade my space. Like, I can put these boobs out and let him see it, and I can almost be assured he's going to invade my space, right? Because they just need an image. Sin doesn't need much, and I don't want that for myself, the protection of myself. So I want women to look at that in that way rather than being responsible for somebody else's sin. Now, if I'm dressed appropriately and I feel like I'm protecting myself, I'm not putting exposure everywhere, and they do it, that's not my problem. That's just not my problem. And I'm not going to cage my own self in to cover every single part of my body that whatever, I think I looked cute in something, and all of a sudden it's revealing to someone else. I can't control other people. And so it's more about trying to figure out how you can monitor and manage your own self in a responsible way that you feel good about you.
Sure.
And I don't think exposing your body is ever going to make you feel good. In fact, a lot of women that do that are really insecure and wanting their flesh to be noticed.
Right.
And so then, it's noticed, and then you never know what's going to happen from it. But, I think that we got to come from a different angle. But you were asking me how it can affect a marriage. My gosh, it can really affect a marriage, because if you already are struggling with insecurities and you don't know who you are because of the background that you came from, and everything is bad, stay pure, stay pure, just stay pure, and then all of a sudden you're thrown into this covenant, and then all of a sudden you have to be all free and give him everything he wants. I mean, that's like being chained to a chastity belt, and then all of a sudden it ripped off and say, okay, now be my stripper. I mean, how do you do that? It's a mind mess up. So I think it's very dangerous. I think that the purity culture, I didn't even know there was a culture called purity. I didn't know there's such a thing. I think the way to do that, if you really are intentional about getting women aware of their value, is to make them feel more valuable. Yeah. And not just concentrating on the word purity, you know, teaching them that they're saving their bodies to allow their bodies to be free in the covenant. And then if, you know, something happens and they didn't save their body, you don't beat them over the head with a bat. You help them come out of that. The problem with fornication type of sex is it's soul ties. Yeah. I mean, if women were taught that, listen, girls, when you have sex with these dudes, you're taking on all their sins.
You're becoming emotionally
connected. Yeah. You're taking on their mental. And then the women were, why am I so in love with him and he's gone, and ruminating about him and I can't quit thinking about him? Because you've had sex with him and all of his stuff, literally and figuratively, is inside you now. So if women are taught that from a young age, that you keep your body pure. And I don't even know if we should keep the word pure. I think you keep your body protected because you don't want all this stuff on you and in you, and it's not going to protect the vessel. And so then when a woman makes a mistake and is fornicating, I mean, because God did give us that sexual need, right? Yeah. And it comes in at about puberty. So it's not just for the males, it's for the females as well. Right. And then teaching the women that, you know, when you take on all of this from a male, you get fractured emotionally. And if your conscious gets fractured. So it's a fractured consciousness because of the mental and the emotional anguish of that breakup. Because a woman doesn't typically, especially at a young age, just give her body freely. She usually feels like she's in love and the birds are singing and the butterflies are flying. And then he breaks up with her. She's devastated because she knows she's given herself away. So teaching the women that, okay, that's just a soul tie, your mind, your emotions, and even the spiritual that comes upon them when they have sex. When the woman's taught that, then she doesn't feel like she's sinning and she's so bad, but that, you know, we work to break that off of her, to restore, Jesus is a restore that mind, and it takes a little time to walk them through it. Yeah. I mean, that's hope, why there's hope. Yeah. Yes, there's hope. Yes, there's hope.
I love that. And it, you know, again, it's going back to, why has God called us to live this way? Not because, you know, shame on us if we don't, but because it's about protection. It's about protecting us. So as a parent, because, you know, a lot of people who grow up in environments like this, you know, you'll have kids whose parents never one time sat them down to talk to them about their bodies, about healthy, you know, sexual feelings, about, you know, I remember Branson telling me one time, like when he was young, which is my husband and your son, and he was saying, like, you know, he saw a girl and he thought she was pretty and he like felt so bad about it, and he came to you and you were like, no, like, that's okay, you can look at a girl and, you know, he's a young boy, like, and be like, oh wow, she's really pretty, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's when we, you know, let our mind go into all these sexual fantasies of all the things you might want to do with somebody, is when we go down, you know, a different path. But as a parent, how do you teach your children about their bodies, and even things like, you know, hey, this is your body part, you have a penis or you have a vagina, you know, like where it's comfortable to say those things? Because even in a lot of times in that culture, it's like, oh, you have your, you know, little pee pee or whatever, and it's like then you're having children who aren't learning how to even advocate for their bodies. Like, hey, my mommy taught me no one's supposed to touch my vagina, and so then they're able to kind of be more aware of abusive situations. But tell us a little bit about how do you kind of introduce children to like these healthy things as they age and get older?
Normalize.
Yeah.
Let them understand it's normal.
Yeah.
Like, this is normal. This is natural. It's okay. And then be age appropriate with what you tell them. My second son, Brock, he, they start young. I remember he was about 5 years old, maybe 4.5. We were at a football game, a high school football game, and the little dancers were dancing. And he was so engaged with what they were doing, he ran into a pole. Like, knocked his head. And I started thinking, oh my God, this is like really natural. I mean, he's 4.5, 5 years old, Same son, we were sitting on a rocker, all three of the little children. We had a little bay window in the kitchen, and I was rocking, and we were talking. It was raining. We would always watch the rain. We always liked to do that. And I had a little fountain, and I had some daylilies around it. And the daylilies, they come up in a cone when they're blooming.
Yeah.
And same son, he said, I don't know, he might have been 4 or so. He said, that flower needs a girl. Because of the way it was coned. It's like, okay. So I guess I need to start this birds and bees thing kind of quickly because he's already figuring it out, And so it's age appropriate. I didn't tell them all about penetration and all at that time. And I'm like, yeah, a boy needs a girl sometimes. He's got to wait, though, till he blooms. Because if he does it too early, it's not going to be good for him.
Yeah.
So he's got to wait till he blooms, And then, that was just an introduction to where he didn't feel shamed of, what are you talking about? He needs a girl. How do you know that? All of that. Just normal flow is how I parented. And I let the children teach me at whatever stage they were at. So I knew they were ready to potty train when they were hiding in the corner doing their business. That's how I knew. I knew they were ready to get off their bottles when those bottles were being slung across the room. See, I would let them kind of teach me their stages. And so when they would, throw fits or whatever they would do, I would dig into why are they really frustrated. Instead of them frustrating me, I would say, why are they frustrated? And I would always go to the love language deal. You got to figure out the love language of yourself, the love language of your partner, and the love language of each child. And when you can figure out their love languages, then you minister to them right there. Usually a child will scream their love language. That's how you know. You don't ever buy me anything. They're probably gifts. You don't ever spend any time with me. When you're like, oh my God, I spent 18 hours with you last week. Do you not remember?
Yeah.
You don't ever hug me. I just had you on my shoulder. That's they're telling you physical touch, acts of service, quality time, and gifts. They're telling you by what they're screaming you're not doing. So rather than defending yourself and taking it personal, analyze it. Say, okay, I got to give this kid a little more physical touch. I've got to give this kid, and do it before they start complaining.
Yeah.
See, that is what love is. This whole stay pure and all, that's not love. That's not getting to know the person. That's not bringing them up in value. That's scaring them to death of you.
Yeah.
And then not letting them be very well developed going into a marriage where they have to be open sexually, and they get confused. And I'm working with a girl right now. She's like, my school, she went to a Christian school, and she goes, they taught so against sex. First of all, anything you're going to preach so much against,
you probably
going to get right. And there's probably something going on. So it's like, instead of teaching the kids again how to protect themselves and be careful, and instead of, sin, you're going to hell. I just, if we're all going to hell, I don't know what the blood of Christ was for. because I need to step first in the gates. I mean, why did the blood of Christ need to be shed? But at the same time, I don't believe that we just, because of the blood of Christ, we just say, oh, it's just going to do whatever, because we're not protecting ourselves. And the more we don't protect ourselves, the more seared our consciousness gets. And that's why we're in this conscious awakening. Is because the conscious has been asleep because of so much of the sin, meaning we've been off the protective journey. So we're awakening our consciousness to different things. And I think anytime you take a word and just, mind control a person to that word, and guilt, and you're not going to conform a person, you're going to abuse a person. You're not going to develop them into what they could be and to be able to get them on their mission. That's our roles as parents. I mean, this whole young child, stuff we've got to get through is basically you got to see that a soul decided to come into your family at that moment. They chose you, and they're God's, and not a God, but they are God's children. And then I had to be careful because, the New Age thinks we're all God's, so I had to be careful with that.
God's children, yeah.
And you're then letting them come into got them on borrow, if you will, and you're raising them until they can be a little more equipped. And then your goal at that point is to figure them out, to build them up from the bottom, from the foundation, to who they're supposed to be. So you have to really be able to learn their giftings, learn their love languages, so that you can target that, so that brings them up. Learn how to discipline properly, never out of frustration. And I was a frustrated parent sometimes, but I never disciplined out of frustration. It was just one of the decisions I made in my life and the commitment I made for myself. And I was raising 2 sons at first, and I had a daughter. And I knew that with a male, you were if you were going to be a controlling mother or too, giving of a mother, you're going to raise a narcissist either way. So you have to be a balanced mother when you're raising men, because that's what they're going to become. And when you're raising a daughter, you got to remember you're role modeling. Everything that she sees, she's going to become.
Right.
And if you like you and you're really developing you to the best part of you, then you want her to follow in those footsteps. You don't want to control her. You want her to be who she is, but you want to be able to live an example that she's proud of, she appreciates, she's grateful for, so that then she can follow into that at her own pace, in her own time. I mean, I'm a big cook. I love to cook, but my daughter never wanted to learn to cook, and I didn't push it.
Yeah.
You know what? Now she's, in a relationship. She has her own place. Guess what she's calling me for?
Cooking.
Yeah. So it comes in their own time.
Yeah.
And so you just have to be there and let them grow in their own time. But the discipline and love balance is really important. Targeting that love language. As soon as you find it out, they're going to be whining about it pretty early, about 2 years old. And then being able to balance yourself so that you're a good role model.
Okay.
And then being able to discipline properly. And discipline probably means whatever a kid can do on 3, these parents count 1, 2, 3. Whatever they can jump up and do on 3, they can do on 1. So when you teach your children how to do what you need them to do by 1, and there's a consequence if they don't do it that you follow through with, that's how you start raising good humans. And then your goal is, what is their mission? Because I'm their foundation to their mission. And that's going to be done by their giftings, finding their giftings, building up their value, and then being able to notice what they desire as they go along.
So when we talk about discipline, and this can be for people who have children or just people who've maybe been disciplined poorly while they were children and are healing from that today, what does it look like? Because a lot of the discipline that you receive growing up, the way that you're disciplined, I have found, then correlates to how people view how God disciplines them. And so, if you were disciplined growing up with this really heavy-handed, shameful sort of, behavior, then that's developed into how you view how God disciplines you. How do you work through these steps of recognizing and breaking off some of the shame that might have come from their time within purity culture? Because I think a lot of people have left that. I mean, I know some people are still in it and maybe just coming out of it. But when you still feel and carry all of this shame, and you just kind of view God as like mad at you, or you're not doing enough, or you're not enough, how do you walk through these steps of breaking off that shame and understanding how God actually does discipline us when we do something wrong or do something we're not supposed to do?
Well, the simplest way to look at it, because everything, like we said in the beginning, is about changing your mindset. Mm-hmm. And so when you understand some key factors here, people who control really are based in fear. Mm-hmm. They're just controlling out of fear. Fear that, if you mess up as their kid, their image is going to be shot. Fear that if you mess up as a kid, God's not going to love them. Fear of their parent, so then they parent the same way, mm-hmm. or the very opposite way that their parent goes. They go to extreme that their parent parented. It's all fear based. Mm-hmm. It's all fear based. And so when you understand there is no fear in God, mm-hmm. and there was fear in your parents, mm-hmm. that's why they control. Mm-hmm. There's fear in the church. That's why they control. And so your job is not to figure out their fear. Your job is to figure out God does not fear. Mm. And so, therefore, if they did things to you, said things to you, created an imbalance in you as a result of their control related to their fear, mm-hmm. God doesn't have to control because he doesn't fear. Mm. You just change perspectives of who they really are. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to blame them. It's their journey too, and however they journeyed through their journey, they journeyed. And yes, wounded people make choices that wound other people, and children are the targets of a lot of wounds with parents that have not healed. Yeah. And so when they're dealing with their own shame or their own fear, they have not done their work. The kids are carrying it as adults. They don't even know how to connect to the God above that really created them, that sent them here, that's walking with them here, even in the dark times that they don't feel it. It is the truth. He's part of our DNA. And so when you can just come to terms with the fact that God doesn't do anything like your parents. Right. Because your parents are doing it out of some wound. Yeah. And then you've got to be able to heal from that. The reveal of mm-hmm. that is real important, is to find out where's the lie, what are you believing, what is not true. Build up your worth in the real God, mm-hmm. As a new example of who he really is. And then you can reconstruct and rewire what is already a mess.
And so what would you say to the people who maybe are still in that church environment where that purity culture, shame is perpetuated?
Well, I mean, people have a lot of connections to their churches, they have long-term friendships, they have mentors, there's groups that they like to be in. So to just tell somebody just to run out and leave it, whatever, is not always the answer. I mean, I think that's individual for each person, and they have to decide if they've had enough, and if they just don't want to be part. And a lot of times they need to go to greener grasses, where something else is there for them to grow and not be so stuck and enmeshed with a church system. But if they don't want to leave, they just have to learn how to emotionally maturely, look at the whole picture and take the good and the bad and, throw away the bathwater without throwing out the baby. I mean, they just have to kind of live in a little bit of a bubble around there to keep their frequencies high. And, when they're combating other things that are not vibrationally resonating with them and they're feeling, you don't have to judge. You just have to keep yourself in a bubble and know yourself. And you don't have to share one thought about what you're thinking about. Now, what'll happen, a lot of times this happens, is that when you get in that bubble, they know, they can feel the energies of that.
Right.
And they're always wondering, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? They can see that you're not controllable.
Yeah.
And that will cause some problems. They'll start coming at you, start questioning you. That is when you start feeling like, I got to leave. That's when you feel it.
Do you have any other thoughts for anybody who's listening, who's been a part of some of these churches? And I know I shared with you this story the other day when we were talking about this, but, you know, pastors calling women penis homes and, like, you know, just some of these things that have been said and influenced by these megachurch leaders who have all of this influence. You know, what would your sort of message be to the women or the men who've kind of come under these environments where, you know, the women's job is the only thing they can do is please their husband and, you know, be there. And if they don't please him every single second, you know, you better watch out because he's going to go find a hooker, you know, kind of like these sort of mindsets where all that pressure is. What would you say to them?
Well, I think anybody who's under a pastor who talks about a woman's, you know, birthing canal as a penis home is so disrespectful, not only to the woman as a gender, but also to what God created her to do, to bring life. And I would question that individual deeply if that's even in the psyche to come out of the words of his mouth. And, you know, I would also, if it were me in the environment, I would bring correction. You know, I wouldn't be scared to call that person out. I'd do it privately, of course. And I would let them know how damaging and how insulting. Now, a lot of the megachurch plants, I would say, the pastors that are basically plants there, know exactly what they're doing to decrease the value of a woman.
Why do you think they do that?
I think because they need the dominance of a male, and they're threatened by the very spiritual nature of a woman. I think we were gifted by God to have a sixth sense, and I think they're very threatened by that because they don't have it. And the sixth sense is your radar that can then, your discernment, that can then see through their BS.
Okay.
And so there's a very supernatural, unseen deity controlling the men so that the men are not seen. So if you can put that under your control, then it will lose its value of the sixth sense, of the natural ability to see through a matter, to have a different perspective, to have discernment that the women carry. God gave that to the women. And as far as, teaching a man, this is my wife, listen, I respect so much and try to teach women how to respect that beautiful place of submission that God gave a woman. It's the most natural thing a woman will feel, and her feminine energy can flow so beautifully when she's under the right leadership to submit to. Now, I don't like the word submit so much because it's the authority and I'm less than.
Yeah.
But to fall under that protective nature of a well-led, God-fearing male is the most beautiful place a woman will ever be able to experience on this life journey.
I agree.
But many women do not have that experience.
Yeah.
And so with the leadership of any kind, whether it's the counseling leadership or your education leadership or your clergy leadership, whatever the leadership is that is trying to beat a woman down into submission, it's out of, again, fear. And a man, a husband who values that very nature of the woman that God gave her is going to lean into it.
Yeah.
He's going to say, honey, what do you think about this? He's going to see it as a gifting to himself by having her. and he doesn't want to beat her down. And he's going to draw her in, and she's going to feel very loved by being drawn in. And in that draw-in communication, she's going to feel that feeling of being under him and protected by him and honored and lifted up all at the same time. It's a beautiful thing that's supernatural. It's only something that God could have created. And it's all twisted.
Yeah.
And they've got it all twisted. Like, these are beautiful things. Just like marriage, the institution of marriage is so twisted right now because it might have been for a long time, but in my generation and seeing what's coming in the next generation, it's like when you get married, you can just do whatever you want to. You can get all fat. You can get all grossed out. You don't have to brush your teeth. You can be passive aggressive. You can be angry and throw things. You don't have to do one chore. I mean, it's like, really? When did you lose your own responsibility for yourself just because you got married? Marriage is a blessing. It is a shared place for two people to journey and together to where you don't have to share. I mean, you can share the load. You don't have to do the load by yourself. But when you take advantage of the marriage and the men are not working and the woman has to work. And I mean, the woman is a helpmate to the man in the provision role, just like the women are the nurturers of the children because of that discernment we have, right? The men are a helper to that. We just are switching these roles all around and thinking nothing of it and becoming lazy as a result of, okay, I'm off the streets now, so then you get to smell my armpits. Well, wait a minute. You have to have self-care. You have to continue to grow in yourself. We are getting married and people are becoming depressed and not getting up in the morning and not doing what they can do to make the day wonderful. Well, what did that person do to deserve that because they married you?
Right.
It's irresponsible living, and it is abusing the institution of marriage. That's why the rate of people keeping themselves whole and continuing to grow is so much higher with those who are cohabitating rather than married, which I do not agree with the concept. Right. I think God made marriage. But why is that? Because we're taking advantage of it. And we're taking advantage of the other person by not keeping ourselves responsible in all of the areas. In the financial area, women are just spending money like it's going off the trees, and the men just kind of working. And she has no concept of that, and she's not contributing at all.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not fair. I mean, we really need to take a step back and take a look at what we're doing in our own individual lives and say, how do I need to be a responsible partner? And then requiring that of your partner as well. I think premarital counseling needs to change. I don't think we have one worth much anyway. The whole process is not great. But anyway, that's what I think is happening in the entire culture.
Yeah. So what about the woman who is maybe, or even a man, married to somebody who's still in the mindset of that purity culture, but they're not?
I would think that if a woman marries into that and the man is in it, she's going to probably be pretty abused. She's not going to be valued because it's his mindset of she's worth nothing. She's his penis container, his container for lust, So that's going to struggle. And then if it's the woman who's in it, she's going to struggle with sexuality. She's going to struggle with the feminine energy, which if the man is not in it, then he's going to, wonder what the heck. I mean, he's going to want a woman operating in that feminine energy. And what this purity culture is doing is closing down the feminine energy. That's what it's doing. It's just shutting it down altogether and saying it's bad. The feminine energy is beautiful. It is beautiful. And the shutdown of it is for the reasons that we talked about spiritually.
Okay.
So if you can get into their minds and mess that up, then you shut down the whole energy force that they give out of that. But what to do about it? I mean, obviously, this is an unequally yoked situation, and that doesn't survive according to Scripture and according to statistics. So you're going to have to get counseling to get some assistance to change the mindsets. But if it's ingrained and there's no change, like there's a resistance, they don't want to change, they like who they are, you're gonna have a long road in your marriage. There's not a lot you can do if you're the other partner. There's a lot you can do if you are the person that was inundated with this purity stuff. And I would think the women would feel more, I don't know, inclined to get help because they can feel it's unnatural.
Yeah.
But if it's the man in this culture, he may not feel that feeling.
He probably feels empowered.
Empowered, right. But it's the wrong power.
Right.
It's the wrong power. It's dominion rather than authority. And it's not going to suit him. He's going to have a trail of people in behind him that he has harmed through that. It's not going to be just his wife. It'll be his children. It'll be his coworkers. It'll be a lot of people because his mindset is not open. It's so closed with him being in charge. I mean, it's just a narcissist breeding.
Sure.
You know.
I liked, and this can be the last thing that we cover, but going back to the feminine energy that you were talking about, because we had mentioned earlier, the importance of protecting our bodies and making sure, you want to dress appropriately because you're protecting yourself, like we said, from, who knows who's out there. But there's an aspect of the feminine energy, and especially when you're married, where you want to look nice and you want to feel beautiful and you want to wear clothes and do your makeup and do your hair, and all of that makes you feel beautiful. Is that vain? Is that wrong?
No, not at all. That's nurturing yourself. I tell women all the time, get out of your workout clothes and put your makeup on. I mean, like for yourself, you will feel so much better if you get dressed for the day.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you've got to look like a movie star. I'm just saying do whatever makes you feel good, and invest in yourself. Invest time in your Calgon baths. Invest time in front of the mirror. It's not about your flaws or, hiding your flaws or sitting in front of a mirror just to say, oh, how beautiful I am. It is about enjoying the avatar you're in, just enjoying it and making it the best that it can be, the strongest that it can be, because not only is it the appearance and what you do to your hair, some of these women, these husbands are coming home, the women hadn't brushed their hair or washed their hair for a week. But as soon as they got someplace to go with their girlfriends, they're looking all hot. Well, we got to look at that. That's, again, taking advantage of the marriage.
Yeah.
You have to take care of yourself. And then not only in front of the mirror, but also physically, to keep your body strong. And I don't want people to work out in order to have a rock hard body. I think that can go extreme. I think you got to work out to keep your energies, to feel good, your mental health, your serotonins. You have something to do, But all of that, even Scripture talks about, is all good, but not as good as the spiritual workout. So, when you're going to church, especially if you're in a dogma church of all of this kind of doctrine, that's not growing you spiritually. That's hurting you. It's not bringing you up. And so, you want to have some time of meditation and prayer with the Lord. And if you are in prayer with the Lord about shame and feeling like you have done something really bad, I want you to repent, and I want you to be able to get back in alignment. But I also don't want you to think that, okay, I repented, so we're good. If you've done something in sin, you've harmed something, either yourself or someone else. And I want you to be responsible in being attentive to healing that. If you've harmed your partner by something you've done in sin, I want you to be attentive to that partner and heal that. Not, oh, the Lord has forgiven me. You have harmed people.
Right.
And that's the part you have to be responsible for, to help to heal. And if for sure you've harmed yourself, you've got to heal yourself if you've even in that kind of situation.
Yeah, and I think all of that is just really helpful for people to hear. You know, I've seen there's kind of this movement on Instagram right now with these Christian women influencers who have decided to stop doing their makeup and only wear baggy dresses and not do their hair and just kind of like let it, you know, be natural, which again, there's not anything necessarily wrong with that if you feel that is what you're led to within modesty, but you know, that's not the standard, I don't think, that needs to be for every single girl out there, because it can be very impressionable when you know, are seeing, oh, that's what you should sort of, they kind of are phrasing it in a way of like, you've come past all of that other stuff of like, you know, putting on the makeup or wearing the different outfits that make you feel beautiful, and you've now arrived at the place where, you know, you just don't need those things anymore.
Well, and I think that's okay too, right?
Okay.
If I definitely think that if they look like a supermodel with all their makeup on when they, you know, baited and got their husbands, and then all of a sudden decides they want to be dowdy Debbie, you know, they probably need to get his permission on it, right? Because otherwise you're just a liar. And he needs to know that you're going through some growth things and that you want to know what his opinion is about it and whatever. And let me tell you something, there's not one man that would be bothered by a woman deciding she doesn't want to wear makeup or whatever if he sees light in her. Okay? So all of this, because that could become a movement. Oh, everybody wear baggy clothes and no makeup, and all we do is got a bunch of ugly people because there's no light. Okay? It's not about the actual product you're putting on your face or even your body. It is about the light force within you that's coming out. And if there's a light force within you, you desire to get dressed, you know? And if you are just wearing baggy clothes and no makeup and trying to look like you I don't know, from a primitive culture, you might want to go back to that primitive culture unless you have light in you. And if that light is shedding all of that, great. But it needs to be that positive energy coming in and not something that you're just really giving an excuse for pure laziness of self-care.
Yeah. And, you know, young women today should be able to express themselves however they want to and not just follow after whatever Christian influencer is doing, and, you know, finding for yourself. Do you like getting your hair done and wearing makeup and clothes? Like, there's nothing inherently wrong with any of those things. And if you like not doing that stuff and you like just wearing long dresses all the time, then that's great too. But doing it because that's what you want to do, not because you feel like that's the standard of a good Christian and you have to live up to that.
It has nothing to do with Christianity. Nothing. In fact, it could really be the opposite. Christianity is about the light force within you. And we've got to get through a lot of pain because the pain comes from the darkness and it dims the light. And so getting through that spiritual part of getting your light back and then feeling confident within yourself, whatever you wear on your body, that confidence comes from a light force that only is gotten by spirituality and that divine connection. I've lived a long time. It waxes and wanes. It goes up and down, and sometimes it's very close, but the presence of him is always there. And being very conscientious of that presence and connecting to that presence, and even on your worst days, knowing and acknowledging that presence is what keeps the light, the ember burning. And so, you know, I think we have to work at these things and we have to change our mindsets on most things. And when the mind is changed, everything else follows.
It's very true. It's very true. Well, thank you for sharing all of that wisdom with us today. And if you're in a marriage and you feel like you are in a crisis, you've listened to some of the stuff today and you recognize maybe you need help, we'll list Suzette's coaching information down below where you can find her services. And do you have any final words for anyone who's listening?
Well, I'd like to know, maybe the audience would like to know, because you took this training and you are now active in a business. I got to read one of your testimonies from one of your clients, which was filled with accolades. Thank you. Accolades. Wrong word. Accolades for you. Do you feel equipped by the MWI training?
Yes, definitely. There is so much, a wealth of information. And, I will say having the knowledge and the wisdom that comes with the course is so, so helpful. But then on top of that kind of just gives you the confidence to trust that people are coming to you. And obviously I work with people who've gone through spiritual abuse or things like that. But, they're coming to you, because you have this certification, you have this knowledge, and then you also have the life experiences. So I think it's a balance of, knowing what to do with your life experiences. Maybe that's a better way for me to put it. I have all of the knowledge from what I've went through, that personal history. How do I use that knowledge to help other people? And that's what MWI does. It helps you take your story, the pain that you've been through, and bring a purpose to it of, hey, this has helped me walk through healing in my own life. And now I know that I can partner this training with my personal history to help other people step into that breakthrough too.
And do you feel like it gives you enough tools to work with the client?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And as you go, it's kind of like you learn as you go. You get more confident within yourself as you become a life coach, as you have clients and you work with them. But yeah, there is a wealth of knowledge and information in there. And it's not, if you are wanting to become a life coach, it's so much about listening and being there for somebody and understanding and empathizing with them. And so, walking through MWI, all of the exercises that you can do. I was telling you today, I walked somebody through the inner healing exercise, which you teach in your program. And oh my gosh, the breakthrough that person had was phenomenal. I mean, just seeing God reveal to them how he's removing those lenses that we're talking about. And so, yes, there's so much information in there that's been very beneficial.
Good. Because that was my goal, is to take all of the education that I've had and the experience, not only in my own spiritual life, but also in my counseling practice, to, download so that it would multiply, so that the layman that, doesn't have hours and years to go to school and get trained and all that can help, because I do believe that the harvest is great and the laborers are few. So it was a way to kind of multiply. So I wanted to get on camera what you really thought about it, in your own experience, because it sounds like your clients are really starting to heal, and that's such a privilege. Isn't it a privilege?
It is.
I find that every time I work with someone, it's such a double-edged sword. It helps them and it helps me, and it sharpens me, it sharpens them, and I always feel very privileged when I'm thanked by a client, by either they text or whatever, and many of them do it through the years after, thank you. I just say it was my privilege.
It is.
Because it really is a privilege to be able to do this. And I know a lot of you want to do this. I mean, I know a lot of you have that aspiration to be able to help others. I mean, that's the whole journey, is to help others. And I know that you have that desire burning in your heart and you just don't know how to start. And that's what I did with MWI. I just tried to get it so easy. It's just such an easy thing to go through, and you grow as you're going through it, right? You get to know some other things about yourself, and so the level that you're healed at is the very level that you'll heal others. And listen, guys, I'm not healed all the way either. I mean, it's a journey, it's just, we go from line upon line, precept upon precept, and just taking the opportunity that you have to heal when it's presented to you is what our responsibility is, and we're accountable for. So it's been always great talking to you, Shelby. I hope this helps your purity culture people. I didn't even know that was a thing. But I hate that these women are being abused by something else, But I think that's what we really called down today, and that was why What is the supernatural deity reason on the dark side doing this for? And they're trying to shut down the discernment of the woman.
Yeah, and we have the power to not allow that to happen to us. So, right. Suzette, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you guys for listening and tuning in. Suzette's information will be down below, as well as the discount code for becoming a certified life coach. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next time.
All right.